going to sit off camera. You can hear me. My name is Carol Ferguson. I'm the Executive Director of the Gabriola Arts Council. And today we welcome Dave Bodaly and Geraldine Manson to tell us a little bit about Snuneymuxw culture. And I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Bodaly. My traditional name is Lache from Nanaimo First Nation. When we're at a gathering, as this will be our first gathering for many of you, I haven't met many in person, but when we're thankful to be at a gathering, we bring our hands in front of us and you shake them twice and you say, Haichka. That means thank you in our language. And when you put the hands into it, it's showing that there's effort put into it more than just speaking the word. Thank you. Welcome to our series, our Nanaimo Knowledge Keeper, myself and Geraldine Manson. I'm going to turn it over to her and allow her to welcome you.
ICM, CM, CM, Mestimo, CM Solelos, ancestors of the land. Today, we are on the our ancestors' land, the traditional territory of Nanaimo people. I welcome you to this new virtual way of sharing culture, history. I'm honored to be here this morning to share the beautiful history, the legacy that we have within our knowledge as knowledge holders. I thank you for taking the interest, of taking the time to be with us. Haichka, Haitsievka, Antapatsatasia Snuneymuxw, each to E is all. Okay.
Someone is on our Zoom and logging in, and that's what we're seeing right now. So I don't quite know how to make this go away.
Carol, it means really somebody weird. Has hit screen sharing
so
or
Lynette,
content.
If you can stop sharing your screen, please, that would be great. Let me see this. We've been hijacked.
Wow. Whoever's L. Carter, could they take this screen away?
I can't do anything.
No, but who's L. Carter?
Because she's sharing her screen.
Why is she doing that?
Sometimes people hit this share content by mistake, and you can actually set it so that people can't share their screen.
I can't do anything.
Huh. Are you the host, Carol?
Yes. How do I can't, but
well,
it's...
Why don't you try looking at the three little, or go to participants and see if you can actually shut that down. You could have her leave and then she can come back later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, because I am.
Sorry, everyone. This is really bizarre.
You did something.
Yeah, Lynette, tell her to sign off. You're holding the rest of us up.
I just removed her and it's still there.
Yeah. So somehow she's not realizing she's sharing it.
There we go. Yay!
Got her.
Okay, we did it.
So glad you're here.
Oh my goodness, that was stressful.
Mute myself.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so how do you turn? Do you use this arrow?
Just click the pen. Just click it.
I did.
I can click it for you.
Okay. Here, Gabriola Island has many place names from the north to the south to the west to the east. Quicomalatsin is Twin Beaches, and the word means close together. Huithikin means loud voice place, and that's on the east side. Wasolokol, the words mean container. Fay out, Hutsa, Quenes, Dietmol, and so on. Many place names that our old people have placed for a reason at each one of these sites. And just like we who have traditional names like Cetacia was handed down by my great grandmother, these place names also has a meaning behind them, whether it's spiritual, whether it's a village site or a sacred site. And Gabriola Island has many, over 20 traditional place names surrounding the island. Here, can you go back to the other one?
Sorry.
This one here is our traditional knowledge holders, just to give you an idea of how we become trained. And it is guided by one of the elders within our community that take upon to mentor someone under their wing. And the second slide, you will see late Anderson Tommy, who is sitting in front of a petroglyph that's over on the Borsic property there, one of the images there. And Auntie Ellen and I, back in the day when we were young, is also near many petroglyphs that she's actually doing some work on them. And my brother-in-law, Colt Seamolt, is one who takes care of some of the petroglyphs over on the island, especially the one in Duke Point, the salmon petroglyph, that he does a ceremony every fall. Here, to give you an idea of some of our sites on our lands, and not only here on Gabriola, but protection to Nanaimo River, Harewood Plains, to Petroglyph Park, Cedar by the Sea, Yellow Point, Jack's Point, Brecken Point, and several private properties throughout the area of our land. This one here, Hutlicks, over in Olabar Point, is on the water. This is how he looked back in the day. But if you go try seek out his site where he is, he no longer looks like this. He's weathered. He's been just, some of these parts are being destroyed, broken off, and he refers to the wind, to the weather. And it's also a site where the old people had the fishing village site there. They used to camp there when time came. And the stories that they told of this Hutlicks, he was a man in his time. And he had the ability to change the weather. If it was too calm in the waters, he would change it to bring the wind, to allow the old people to travel from one place to another. Or he could calm it to allow the travelers to go traveling safely to where they needed to go. But the day came when Hales, who was the one that turned individuals to stone, somehow Hales had a bad day and turned Hutlicks into stone, where he rests today on Olabar Point. As we all know, Gabriola Museum has many of our replicas. Back in 1998, over 30 reproductions in various sizes are laid throughout the museum grounds. And today, they're still there. But it was through the Nanaimo elders back in the days that allowed this to happen, but they also said that not to be able to, it would be able to preserve the images that actually were true in the forest, wherever they may be, and they wouldn't be bothered or destroyed. And doing rubbings was going to be okay. And then the elders met again. Well, maybe we spoke too soon. Maybe we should have put more thought to it. If you're doing a rubbing on an image, which still has the energy, are we causing harm to the individuals that may be doing it, especially the young people? So it came to a point, I think the Gabriola Museum stopped the rubbings. But then again, down as years moved forward, a trademark came to be. And it took meetings. The elders came over, spoke to a group of individuals about their concern of individuals using the images, commercializing them, putting them on clothing or jewelry and cards. So they wanted to stop. Those meetings, I must say, one became very nasty, where they were rude to the old people by saying in those images, how do they know these images belong to Nanaimo, and that our words were true. But we continued to move forward on protecting our images. And there are 10 on the island that is under a trademark right now, and that trademark is forever. This trademark, as they call it, is only good for 15 years and you have to reapply. But for Nanaimo, we got it to be where it would be continuing forever. Here is a couple of images that one is of the dancing man, the rubbings, and the true image. So you can see the weathered look of it. And this is one of the images that is now under trademark. And this one here and the one beside it is both, it looks like bird-like carvings, they say. But in reality, it is sacred images. And the kingfisher. And when you go to this side of the kingfisher, there's always this pool of water by his beak. And it could be summertime and the water would be still there. And I found this very amazing to see this one. And this one here, the image was first documented in 1874 by a provincial surveyor who inscribed it that it was an Indian carving of a seal on a rock. However, it is not that of what they say it to be. It's a transformation. It is a sacred to our longhouse. And several known Nanaimo elders assert that many of Petroglyphs were made by shamans connecting to the spirit world. And then there were the hunters and travelers and vision seekers who actually know of these sites. And the one on the other side is another sacred image of the Swahili dancer. Here again, the mouse woman, they call her. Again, it's on private property. But we take a deep breath and kind of apologize to the energy of this rock and how it's being used, not being respected as it should be. People from afar travel to this site because they feel that the energy of this rock causes healing from within. Whatever the individual is seeking, there's prayer to be done, and hoping the rock, to visit to the rock, their prayer will be answered. But the old people say that you can't approach an image, such as the mouse woman they call her, and do work without using the words in Hulkamanum and having an elder be present. Wildwood site, this image here, and there's another image over in Harewood Plain site. These two images are known as a compass. Back in the day, when travelers traveled from one location to another, they would come across these images. And by how the images is laying and looking, or if they have something in their hand that's pointing into a direction, they just know where the next one is. And when we were over here with the old people, late Bill and late Anderson and Auntie Ellen, they talked about the compass and where to go for the other one. And the other one is up in Harewood Plains. And sure enough, it was there. The other one is under the water in the Nanaimo River area. Here, another one that someone etched in one of their notes, archaeological notes, and you can see the whale chasing and the young boy on it. I shared it with Auntie when she was here, and she already had a story of the transformation of the young boy to a whale. So again, images that has story to it. And by just standing and looking at the image, you see where the story is and what type of story, whether it's a story, whether it's a directional tool, or whether it's spiritual and sacred. Here, this is a special one. He can only be found in the wintertime at low tide. Near spring water. And the purpose of that rock being there by the spring water, and the old people knew that the spring water would be able to come through, but only in the wintertime when the low tide is, to get the spring water from that area. Yeah. This one, the sun star. How powerful is this story that goes with it? The seasons, the solace. If you stand in front of this beautiful space looking at it, and imagine how the ancestors back then, going by the stars and the sun to mark the seasons, and the shadow of the sun going down and knowing is the season of, whether that be the season of salmon, whether that be season of hunting or gathering. This is the sun star. Here's another way they say that this rock represents the old people telling of time. Notice this is their version of telling of time. It's a calendar. But the old people don't see it that way. They see it as something that belongs in the water, and it's there by the water. So there are always two versions when someone puts it into a book or into their version of what it represents. And going to the community and having elders that are still around to talk about images that they're uncertain of, such like this one. They will probably give you the two different version of what it really means. Here's the eagle, Yahweh. It's also on private property. And the other one of the dancing man, both recorded by Ian Wilson, who is an archaeologist back in 1990s, I believe. What I talked about earlier about the Gabriola Petroglyph rubbings and how the young ones were able to do some rubbings of our images. The one in the corner down here is sacred. Now, it could cause harm. It could cause, if that energy ever woken up, something unknown could have happened. So the old people say no more rubbings to protect anyone from doing it. I want to talk about our other sites. This one is Harewood Plains site. And at least 15 of these images were taken and I believe are were cast, they were photographed, etc., and now are placed in the Royal BC Museum. I followed up with the Royal BC Museum to inquire about these images that they have replicas of, and the photos, they couldn't find it. Because we wanted to repatriate it back and take it back to our community. But then she said she couldn't find them. They're lost in some warehouse. Here is Petroglyph Park in Nanaimo. And this is a story told by Albert Wesley, because Petroglyph Park is a name given to the site, but it's known as Taqwam. Taqwam was a great hunter and a fisherman. And these images here were so vibrant when we took them. And below is his canoe that now rests by the mill. The story attached to this is that Hales, who was a powerful man in his time, but also Taqwam was powerful. Hale visited the site and watched Taqwam throw up the salmon in spirit and place it and do his work. He asked Taqwam to show him the work if he could do it. Taqwam tried to show him, but Hales couldn't do it. That angered him. He left and told his companion he'll be back. And once they returned, without Taqwam knowing it, he turned Taqwam and his canoe into stone. As you can see, the stone canoe is there, and Taqwam is amongst all his images within the park. Here is over in Jack's Point, another beautiful rock that was made by Taqwam. The different salmon species on the rock. This is where my brother-in-law, Colt Seamolt, goes every season to do the salmon ceremony, to ask the salmon for a safe journey up to the river and into the estuary. To get this rock, the salmon rock, back to its original place, it took a grant under the Cultural Capitals of Canada, where we partnered up with the city to get this rock back from the Nanaimo Museum and transport it back over to the site. 2008, we were successful in returning it. As we all know, Nanaimo, like I spoke earlier about the 10 petroglyphs protected and why we had to protect them. And these trademarks are very unique, as I mentioned earlier. that they were protected forever. And we talked earlier, we used to come over and do conversations about what's a conservation and a covenant. They're two different, how a property owner could put a covenant on his property or her property if there's anything on the land, whether that be an image or a burial. And this would protect such, and a benefit from it, following this unique covenant. And I did a research on authors who all studies images. And there are many who study and has books out of talks about our images. Some are correct and some aren't. I always tell individuals, you know, if you have images within your community or within your space, find out the community's name, First Nation community that you live within, and ask them for further information on those images. There's always questions unanswered. How old is this rock? Does anyone study the rock? Are there similarities? Do other communities? These are some of the questions that I had in my mind. So I reached out to that in the west and the east and the south and the north. And certainly enough, there are similarities far as Alaska, Prince Rupert, Bella Coola, Fort Rupert, right to our own area, Sprout Lake and English and River, Quadra Island, Chemainus, etc. There, I didn't stop.
That's okay.
Ask the questions now.
Does anyone have any questions for Geraldine? You could type them in the chat box.
Because that could open up a conversation about it.
Anyone have any questions? Dave, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, good.
Yes,
I want
I
to
have a
share one of
question.
the stories about, oops, I'm going to come back into the camera. I was outside the camera, so, okay. So I want to share one of the stories that I have shared with the tours that I've done before. And it was dealing with the transformation of the sea wolf on the island here. And so anyone who's hiked up by the mouse woman just behind that rock there, there's another one of the transformation of the wolf, sea wolf. And so the story goes that many years ago, when Schels, the transformer, came here, we call him the transformer, came in different forms, and he came in the form of an eagle. And he came to the north area of the island on the hill, excuse me, and he seen a wolf, and a wolf is called a stakea, and he seen the wolf howling. And so he landed in the trees up above the wolf and asked them, "Why are you howling? Are you calling your friends? Are you calling your family?" And the wolf said, "No, I'm old and I'm hungry and I'm blind and I'm hoping someone will come along and feed me." And the eagle thought for a while, and he said, "I can help you with that, but you have to be willing to follow whatever I ask you to do." And the wolf agreed right away. And the wolf then was told by the eagle that when you hear my voice call in the sky above you, I want you to run towards my voice. And without question, the wolf said, "Yes, I'll do it. I'll run and I'll follow you. When you hear my voice call more frequently, I want you to run faster and faster." And so they both agreed to it. And as the eagle swooped up and flew, the wolf heard his voice and started running towards him. And as the eagle called more frequently, the wolf ran faster and faster. And they were running across a field on the north end of the island here. And unbeknownst to the wolf, the eagle was leading him to the edge of the field where it went off as a cliff down into the ocean. And as he heard the eagle calling more frequently, the wolf ran faster and faster, knowing that he's going to bring him to where the food was at. And the wolf ran right off the edge of the cliff that was right by the edge of the water. And he went down into the water, and when he came back up as the first killer whale, known as the Kalhanamatsan. And that's our word for the transformation of the killer whale from the wolf, because killer whales travel in pods and big groups and are often led by a matriarch, similar to the wolves that travel on the land, and they travel in a pack and they care for the young ones. And there's very many connections to each other and connections to the surroundings, very similar to the killer whale in their oceans. As our oceans, we may be fortunate if we live close to the ocean to see sometimes one of the pods traveling along the coast here, because there's a transient pack that travels along the Salish Sea. So is there any thoughts or any questions? Maybe put a thought in, or maybe put your hand up and maybe they have it. Yes, yeah, by all means.
Yes, Louise Amur is interested to hear more about covenants.
Covenant.
Yeah, that's good, good.
The covenant is something that the homeowner or owner of land that has anything like petroglyphs or burial that they can apply for, and it actually protects. And I think there's a benefit. Can I go back to my slide? Which bit in the end?
Oh, I went too far?
Yeah, it's in the back part. Next one, right here. See, the benefit of placing a covenant on your land for conservation, first and foremost, gives you the peace of mind knowing that the land you care for will be safe forever, regardless of who eventually owns your property. The Island Trust Fund continues in monitoring its conservation covenants annually at no cost to the landowners. The land you love will never be lost to any type of development. And there are couple of that I was involved in a couple of sites here on the island that actually is a covenant placed, because there's burials on their land and will be protected. And if that homeowner was ever to move or sell the property, that covenant stays with a title, and the next new owner would be the like the caregiver of the, no, that site is never to be disturbed or anything. Yeah.
So that moves into her next question, which are the petroglyphs.
Oh,
on
no,
private
no, no.
land
Different Louise, different
protected from
Louise.
being moved or rubbed or used in other ways?
Under the heritage branch, they are protected, and they can't be used or in any manner for commercializing or anything like, or to put rubbings to for their benefit. They are protected under the heritage branch.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Lori Jackson has a question as well. The area behind the United Church here on Gabriola, was it a settlement, and are those images spiritual?
Many of those, there are some that are spiritual, and there are those that tell a story in that, on that site.
So Anne Landry, her comment is, conservation covenants are a powerful tool for land conservation, but are covenants needed for petroglyphs? Aren't they protected by provincial legislation?
Yes, they are protected. And They don't need to have a covenant over it unless it's on private property. Because some private, that's where we had to step in and put those 10 trademarks on some of the images that were being used. It it's good in both ways. There's no harm, but all petroglyphs, no matter where they are protected under the heritage.
That's the end of the questions for right now.
So a little bit of a note to mention about the petroglyphs behind the Anglican or the United Church that's in the South Road there. We have done many tours of that area. I've done personally with the museum here, and I think with the schools we did some, and with Arts Council friends here. And if anyone's interested in doing that, keep in contact with Carol, because it would be certainly nice to arrange to have another tour there. And it is a real honor for me to do this, but also it's important to have a Snuneymuxw individual bringing people to these tours, because some people might have a different interpretation than our stories, as you can see from Geraldine's slideshow. And that's something very important too, is to have that Snuneymuxw connection to these locations, as it being our location, our village. Any thoughts? No? So any other questions or thoughts about the slideshow or about my story or anything that I shared with you today? That's the idea, is to try and open up a dialogue, and it's more difficult now with this Zoom, but if we can send a letter in or a note in or something, that's what we're really encouraging, because I could easily tell lots of more stories, but we want to have the interaction with people too.
Well, here's a question.
Good.
If we come across a petroglyph in the wild, who do we contact?
If you believe it to be a new one, or you could actually take a photo of the image that you come across and actually contact Snuneymuxw. Do believe her name is Desiree, who is under the lands we do have a log of all the petroglyphs on the island here. Every image that we have, I actually have a whole binder and the locations of the images. But we always, if you come across one and you're uncertain, I would take a photo of it and send it to Snuneymuxw administration. And they will, if they're uncertain, they will contact us.
Thank you.
And also to add to that, in our treaty department office, they have a GIS, so people could take a picture with a GPS location, and they can send that location code to our Snuneymuxw, and they can find it that way if you feel more comfortable, rather than giving your address out, because they will know exactly where that site is at when you take a picture of it. So I've done that with my own work that I do, is documenting items with a GPS location. With our forestry, when I harvest cedar in the forest, I always do a photograph of every cedar that I harvest. And with that GPS location, I send that number to our forestry department, so they have an exact location of it. Because sometimes by a description of it, it may not come through exactly on the GPS as where it is located. So that's why I'm encouraging that. So,
Do either of you know the last petroglyph discovered, or the most recent petroglyph discovered?
know of it?
No, like, was it in the
Okay.
80s, the 70s,
Yeah,
the
okay.
60s, the 90s?
Okay, so recently I had a friend of mine lives in Victoria, and his ex-wife lives over here. So he was still in contact with her, and she was walking on the part of her property on the hill close to the north side, is all he could say. And they came across a petroglyph, and he said the moss was really thick on it. So they lifted the moss up to see it, see that it was a petroglyph. And so all I could do was encourage them to do a documentation with a GPS location. And that would have been about 2007 was what I heard. So, but from Snuneymuxw view, Geraldine maybe have just more clarify when.
Yeah. I think I'm not too certain if that was the last one, but I recall someone else calling in. And also, again, the other one was on private property when they were developing. And I guess because of being so close to moss, the moss got moved and, yeah.
Interesting. One person's asking, but normally we should not photograph petroglyphs, only if we're documenting their location.
That's what we're hoping, yes. But it's again, people, if they have it on their own property and they want to document it for the purposes of reporting it to Snuneymuxw, that's what we'd encourage.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly, because they have been copyrighted, so we don't want people to be using it for business cards or for logos for their companies and stuff like that. And that was what the main concern was before.
Now we have a question outside of petroglyphs relating to something you said. Nancy Hetherington Pierce would like to know, when you speak of harvesting cedar, what do you mean?
Oh, good, good. All I have is one small bit of cedar with me, or my cedar headband. I'm a cedar weaver, and so I'm a harvester of cedar. So I am a person who collects the cedar. I choose the cedar through the forest. I collect it, I process the cedar, and I make artwork from it. And I work as a cedar harvester, cedar weaver, and so I teach classes on it also. And I presently have a location in central Nanaimo for those that come in over there on a regular basis, where it's Bevan Park, and I have a shop there where I teach my classes. So it's keep in contact with the Arts Council here, because then they may be able to direct you to the right location. So good. Is that clarified a bit, or is it maybe open up another area of questions too? So because cedar weaving is a very large area. Next week, if you tune in next week on our next session, will be my business partner, Bo Wagner, and he is a canoe carver. And so his work is done with the inside of the canoe, and my work is done, inside of the log, the cedar log. The pay is the word that we use. It's XPEY as the pronunciation for it. And so it is a very glottal word and it's difficult to speak. But he's a carver of canoes from the inside of the tree, and I'm a weaver of cedar from the outside of the tree. So I collect the bark. And if anyone has seen one in the forest, a similar thing, you can document that also. And it's called a CMT, a culturally modified tree. And we don't encourage anyone to go out and try and make more of them. But when you see them, take note of where those are at, because it's also being that good neighbor as we always want to be.
I think a really important question for a lot of people is how to pronounce Snuneymuxw properly.
There are so many versions of Snuneymuxw. Snuneymuxw.
Well, there's a little.
Yeah,
at the end.
Snuneymuxw. Is
Okay.
that XWS?
Yeah.
Snuneymuxw.
Snuneymuxw.
Snuneymuxw. Place of many people.
The place of many people, that's what it means? Oh,
Gathering places.
Gathering place, many people, yeah.
oh, I love it.
And our village site is over 10,000 years old. So our people have continued lived in this area here for over 10,000 years. To give you a little bit of the history of the city of Nanaimo, our people had always communicated with other village sites and with other First Nations from here as far away as California. And when Captain Vancouver came in our deep harbor here, just beyond Gabriola here, and he traveled to our village site, our main village site where we have is from the high rise all the way along the shores to Departure Bay. And our community at that time went out on our canoes to greet him and find out who he was. And he said, "What place is this?" And our people said, "Snuneymuxw." And I guess he interpreted that as Nanaimo. Nanaimo. So it's kind of a glottalized version of that word Nanaimo, which is just Nanaimo, but I could see him trying to write it without the S on the front in England when he registered it. So it didn't become famous because of the lady who made the brownies that become the Nanaimo bar. It was long famous before her, but it was a good credit to help it. Any other questions? Can you direct your questions through the messenger?
Oh, okay, so Nancy, who had the question about harvesting a cedar, she said, so are you using the bark, which is renewable, but making a canoe means cutting down the tree?
Yes and no. So we sometimes will make a canoe from a tree that has been wind blown, has been blown over by the wind. And we will utilize that if we can get to that tree fairly recent after it's been blown over. But the bark has, if the tree has been cut down, I can't use the bark from that. I've been taught by my elders that you don't take bark off a tree that has been touched by a power saw. And that's just somehow it kills the spirit of it. But there are people that have other teachings that they will go out and use a power saw and cut it. And I'm always very cautious of that because we want, I think our auntie used to say it very well, was we're so concerned for the living. What Geraldine was sharing a little bit about the petroglyphs, that sometimes there's energies there that we know not of. And if we have a weak heart or we have some health problems, that can come out. And we certainly don't want to scare anyone, but we want to raise the awareness that this is a First Nations work only. If you came out with someone like myself, it would be a very rare occasion that I have brought other people out. But by coming along with someone else to witness it and do it as a documentation kind of thing, we don't want it to be something that's just published for free. I've seen some of the videos on YouTube and people are publishing things that shouldn't be published. And when someone says that we're cutting down the tree to do it, it's not always cutting down the tree. But again, we don't just take any tree. It's about walking that land. And I think if you tune in more next week with Bo, he will explain a lot more about that into a much deeper conversation about it. So, but thank you for that. I'm hoping that helps a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions? Do you have anything else that you'd like to go over?
Let's take a little bit of a break then too, and we'll come back in a little while and see if there is some more, because maybe people take a little bit of time to think about it. We can take a washroom break and then come back and see if there's more. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Breather. And
we're going to take a little breather and we'll be right back.
okay. Thank you. Okay, we're hoping that someone's got some questions.
Maybe, how much time do I have?
As much as you want.
Yeah.
I have another one on here that talked about petroglyphs where one was destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you mean
Great story.
okay, let's see.
I gotta go into that and take that one out. And
These are all Apple computers.
Looks to be, yeah.
There won't be a problem with me having a non-Apple computer, will there?
If you just bring me your information on a stick as opposed to trying to hook your computer up, that will go much better for us.
Okay.
Mhm.
where's my? You
My
see the
husband Dave is
PowerPoints
supposed
over
to be
here?
here.
Come here.
He's
Yeah, the
gonna be down this afternoon.
Yeah,
PPLX.
fun.
He's
Look at that
very
one.
good.
Look at this
Yeah.
one.
That happened.
Mm,
Isabel, are we live?
No, not that one.
Okay, that's not the right one?
No.
Okay, we're trying to find another PowerPoint presentation that Geraldine has, so please bear with us.
Go down. Might be, try the one above it or, let me see.
Yes, yeah. Oh, no, I'm not going to bother. I might do a slideshow. Yeah, because I can easily bring a flash
no.
and slideshow. I think I got it on my keychain
No.
because I did a
Say
story
that one
at
or this
Gabriola
one? This one?
Museum,
Yeah.
library about
Oh, I
3 years
should've
ago.
named it.
And it went over very well. Yeah, it was a big crowd came out for that. So I kept that flash because I kind of found photos that would relate to Gabriola. Mhm. That's the idea of trying to find something that's
No,
relevant to,
no,
right?
no.
Mhm.
I've been pondering my presentation because my real link Gabriel was, I know.
Yeah. But the fact that it's you that's doing it is the real key, is that's an individual that connects to
Did we look at that
Snuneymuxw,
one?
and that's
Yeah.
important too. That's Bo, his grandfather's great-grandmother came from Snuneymuxw. So it is quite a ways back, but because he's my business partner, we figured we'd do something like that, have him share stories. Because the areas that he's sharing with the cedar is something that's across the board, it's recognized. And that's important to him.
Is that it?
Going down.
Any thoughts, Kate? Any thoughts? I don't want to speak in the microphone, I don't mind. I get kind of used to it fairly
Probably similar
quickly
to
when
what
I
I
was
just
up at
did.
VIU. I said,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah,
you're a
yeah, go to
professional
this one.
Zoomer now."
Go to this one?
Yeah, this one. I want to start at
Professional
number
Zoomer.
9.
Okay, hold on.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so true. And that is nice to see behind the scenes and see the little monitor that.
Oh, I have to go. It won't let me start at 9.
Right here. Okay, I want to talk about one incident that happened within our community around our sacred images and how important when we talk about energy and how powerful our images are to us and how we echo the importance of danger. Out in Cedar by the Sea, BC Hydro is replacing their pole next to a home on their roadway. They were to get a hold of the band, our nation, and the archaeologists to let them know that they're going to start their work. However, they did not get a hold of the archaeologist or the field assistant, which was my husband, to be on site for this work. And what you're looking at is this huge machine that takes out the pole and to be replaced with a new one. Right underneath this is images. Can you go to the next prior to previous one? This is the images of the site that the machine is laying on. And by pushing it on, it destroyed these images. The error the BC Hydro people said was miscommunication. Miscommunication between them and the field workers and the field workers with our nation. However, that didn't excuse the harm to the site. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We, through my research, found that these actual images were cast were now at a museum. So are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And we brought our elders to this site at the time that this was happening. And Doug III was a chief then for this. BC Hydro apologized left and right to the community for the harm it did to this site. But in order to appease the harm to our ancestors, we did a sacred ceremony in honor of them to get the messages that we needed to bring back to the members and to BC Hydro. The ancestors of this land were so angry for the disturbance of their site. It is a site next to a burial that is nearby. And how important it was for us to be on site to let the BC Hydro workers know that there was no equipment to go on this rock, that they were sacred images. BC Hydro met with our leadership and talked about getting more educated around protocols when working within our traditional territory so this would not happen again. They offered compensation that would allow us to do further work around educating and coming forward, not only within our own community, but offering protocols to anyone that's coming into the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw people. Through our sacred ceremony that we did, I had to raise my hand and thank the ancestor that was talking, because it was their word that made it strong that all sites of importance, their images, that we as knowledge keepers, stewardships of the land, to continue echoing. They're just not coloring on a rock, etching on a rock. They're there to tell a story of the site. They are there under spiritual. They're there for a reason. To be protected. So when anyone ever comes across a site like this, and to be a new one, not to take it lightly. When we go onto the land that we're visiting, we always announce and acknowledge with a prayer and a song to ask for permission to and be braced to clear all the obstacles along the way. And at that ceremony that we did for Cedar by the Sea, we were given direction from them to always stand and protect them. This is what I wanted to show. I think I have another one after that. And this is the Royal BC Museum, where our images are, the rubbings that were destroyed at this site. So now the next step is to get the repatriation of these images and bring them back, maybe to the same site, and do a plaque in honor of them. But there's work in progress for these images.
I have a couple of questions from the audience, and one is from Louisa Muir, and she asks, do you have a wish for how you would like us to walk on the land here?
I guess my wish, my thought, my passion is for all those who live on the land of our ancestors, is to understand that we really embrace the legacy that they left. We embrace their energy. We believe that their presence is still here and guide us in some format. And whether you live close by to Theout or Quiquamalutzin, understand the true story of Hutlix, who was turned to stone. And if you don't, do a little bit more research. Visit the site of Hutlix and see how he was destroyed. And down the road, we hope to be able to put plaques up, signs that give honor to these sacred sites, Quiquamalutzin, Theout, Hutlix, in honor of sites that has stories that give the presence of the sacredness of the land that they are on. Yeah.
I have two similar questions that go along those lines. One is from Frieda Woodruff Gremmett. And do you have wishes for how we should look at and contemplate the petroglyphs when we see them?
I think if you're alone or if you're with someone and you come across and you're standing in front of one of the images, to honor them. Say good morning. Thank you. Thank you for your legacy. I heard so much about you. Thank you. I honor your space.
And from Louise and Sybil, are there other things we could do as people living here to protect the petroglyphs?
I think it's, I believe because you live on the island, you can monitor sites, to visit them on a regular basis to see if there's any harm done to them or there needs to be attention given by Snuneymuxw to come over and take a look at any one of the sites. If you have concern over them, if you see any change.
Can I just add to that? So sometimes just being that good neighbor, I think, is important too. Just as you're saying, observe them once in a while, looking at them and making trips and maybe taking pictures for that documentation, just so that we're that good neighbor that we can keep an eye on it if we see some activities going on around this that it shouldn't be, that we report that to someone in authority. So not just allow things to degrade if they are degrading in that way. And I'm sure everyone's really aware of that on Gabriola here, that we want to work as much together. We want you guys to be the eyes for us when we're not here, and keep in contact with organizations like the Arts Council, with the museum, with the different places like the schools and whatnot, so that they're aware of it, even Islands Trust. So we want everyone to work together. Good.
I have a question. I'm wondering if you have working relationships with the people who have the petroglyphs on their private property. What sort of access does Snuneymuxw have? What kind of working relationships? Are you able to do tours of them?
Some we do and some we don't. It took, in my time, it took a tooth. It's like pulling out a tooth, that, not to go on their property. And that's when we start talking about the covenant. We're only here to protect the images that you may have on your property and to document them, and what documentation we have already, and to come on a regular basis to check up on the images. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I always just say when I'm doing my tours all the time, anyone who hasn't been on one of my tours over on Sasatchin or on Gabriola here, it's an honor to share with more people. And as my work is always, I'm a knowledge keeper, to bring that word forward, bring the work. I'm really honored to work with Geraldine today, my cousin, my Shwakwat Shayeth, I'd call her. She's my cousin, but she's from an older generation. And we always say at the ends of my tours, always, we're honored, hoping everyone can remember the word Haichka, and that's what we try to do is relay that to them to get people to remember. But in honor and memory and recognition of Snuneymuxw, please remember that these are Snuneymuxw stories. And that's what the elders shared with me. Please remind people that they're not free to turn those stories around and change them. And I have actually even seen that online, and I've stopped someone from doing that because they misinterpreted my story and then wanted to reshare it and wanted me to okay it. And I said, no, that can't be done. And if anyone is interested further, please keep in contact with Carol at the Arts Council here, or contact either Snuneymuxw or contact myself if you have my contact information. So again, thank you for this time. I've really enjoyed, and we'll look forward to people coming for other sessions too. This new way of doing it as a virtual way, but we're honored when people interact, when there's comments and questions. That's what we're all about, is carry that conversation between us. I'll turn it over to Carol now.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming today and joining us. And I want to thank Geraldine very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to Dave, I'm just going to scoot by you here. There you are. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And everyone, have a lovely afternoon, and we'll see you next Monday.